No. Okay. Hey, everybody. Cynthia Allen here from the Move Better, Feel Better 5-Day Challenge. And I have with me Erifily, Nikola. Before we get started, though, and I'll mention this a couple times for those people who are hanging out and watching with us, um, before you leave us a comment or a question, could you just pop on that description where you clicked on to get to us? It'll say, go over to StreamYard and register your name. You don't have to sign up for an account or anything like that. It's really quick. And that way, when you give us a question and you make a comment, we actually know who you are. Otherwise, it'll just say YouTube user, Facebook user. It's not as much fun for us to see that as it is to see your lovely, lovely names. So when you're ready, feel free to do that and then maybe say hi to us. So I'm really pleased that this year we're going back for another round, although very different in the Move Better, Feel Better events. So this is a very different one for us. It's a 5-day challenge. Erifily, you have been so instrumental in the last few years, but particularly I think in this year as you have a new role with us. And so welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure exploring all those new ways we can use the internet. And I think the challenge is something that it might sound a bit counterintuitive for people who already do Feldenkrais, because we're always about being slow and taking our time, and suddenly we say challenge. But I think we have a really nice idea around it and how to make it support our Feldenkrais ideas.
I do too. And last year, after the summit, which was our 7th summit that we have produced, and the summits, those of you who've been attending summits know they're really big events. A lot of people said they were looking for something a little bit more digestible, easier, simpler to use. And so when this year we thought maybe let's not do a summit again this year, but perhaps do this 5-day challenge as an idea. And it's really, I think it'll be really interesting to see what the results are for people where they're doing one lesson a day for 5 days and not really distracted by any of the talks and et cetera, but only really in their own sensation. What do you think about that, Erifily?
Well, I think it's maybe, if we don't want to call it the challenge, it's kind of the idea we do in our trainings. Because in our trainings, we do 1 or 2 awareness to movement lessons a day. So it's kind of a day, a way to get like a little sneak peek of how it would be to go about doing a different lesson each day.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things about more intensive Feldenkrais experience is that you have one lesson after another often. And sometimes, though, what we do is we just do one a week. So those of you who've been out there who've been doing one a week or one every few weeks, or once in a while you go to YouTube, if you really dedicate yourself to this challenge, and what is the challenge? The challenge is to do a lesson every day for 5 days. That's our challenge. And I think that if people do take that on, they're going to feel a big difference. When I'm doing awareness through movement every day versus sporadically, I feel a big difference. So I think it'll be true for them as well. Now, there's something else that we've been saying, which is slow is the new fast. Slow is the new fast. Where can we go with that? Because I think that's probably intriguing to people who are not into the Feldenkrais world.
Yeah, well, in my personal experience, that component of Feldenkrais, of taking things slow, was very difficult for me in my training, because I am ADHD. I'm a very fidgety person. I was a dancer. I was also very active. So going into Feldenkrais, the component of slowing down was really a challenge. And I can see now, teaching Feldenkrais to yoga people and capoeira people and Aikido people, I can see the difficulty they have sometimes of slowing down in respect to people who are used to doing more slow work like meditation or the slowest forms of yoga. But I think that because the main idea about Feldenkrais is being able to differentiate. And the only way to really differentiate the sensation is taking the time to notice. We're so much into doing things that we're not used to stopping and listening into our bodies. So I think it's very countercultural, especially for us in Europe and in the States, where everything is so fast. But it's a challenge in and of itself. But I think that really slowing down is very important. And once you get through this first stage of being, fidgety and not feeling like, okay, so what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. I'm not productive. When you pass that first stage and really take the time and find the pleasure in the sensation, it's very easy to get hooked. I mean, if I got hooked and I was such a busy bee and fast person, and I learned to slow down, I think that anyone can.
I think the same thing about myself, actually. Very similar in that I'm always doing something. And so when I come to a Feldenkrais lesson, there's like often a place in between where I'm kind of like doing my normal rhythm and then I go, whoa. Right. So I think it's so easy to demonstrate this really because we could just do like a simple movement, like ask everyone who's watching to bring your shoulder up to your ear as fast as you can. Right. This is something that people do a lot. They're like, if they hear that, they're like, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. And then let it go for a moment and then do the movement as slow as you can. Going up and down. And I'll tell you, it's the down that's a big surprise for me every time. It just by going so slow up, not only do I notice like the weirdness in the movement where places are not quite as clean as I thought they were, but when I come back down, I almost always settle into a completely different resting place, even from that one movement. It's freaky. It's freaky, really. It's pretty cool. So if you're out there watching and you want to tell us about your experience with Feldenkrais or ask us a question, pop it in the chat. It's great if you go over and register on StreamYard so we can see your name, but we don't have to, or you just want to say hi to us. Erifily, you were really instrumental in how we set up the format of these days and these options. And so there's two big options. There's one for the general audience, anybody who wants to become a better mover or feel healthier or less pain, etc., more flexibility, all those things that people talk about. And then there's an option for the professional group. But could you talk about the option that's available for people who are wanting to be personally a better mover without an application to their profession?
Well, for me, coming in through yoga and the dance, I found that Feldenkrais applied to everything, and even if you're not a mover, the ideas behind it can really impact. I've seen it impact my graphic design work. I've seen it impact my way of being a parent. So I think that the big difference with Feldenkrais is because, and that's why it's a method and it's not a technique, is that it gives you a very different perspective on what the body is, who you are, what movement is. And that's not applicable only in just feeling better in your chair or becoming more active or getting pain-free, but it also kind of gives you a different perspective around life. I find a very philosophical component to it. One of my favorite one movement ideas that I find is Feldenkrais is about habits. So in order to have choice in our life, and that's any kind of choice, we must know what we're doing. That's what Feldenkrais said. In order to do what you want, you have to know what it is that you're doing. So my favorite example about this is when we interlace our fingers. So if you're listening and are just sitting at your desk and interlace your fingers, and you do it a few times, everyone has their own way of interlacing their fingers, and it feels very natural. And then suddenly, if you just switch it up, so have the top thumb go down and the same for all the fingers, suddenly it feels so weird and counterintuitive and strange.
And I want to change it right back right away. Right away, I feel like I want to go back.
And the thing is, with our habits, for me, the biggest problem, or the first problem, is that we cannot see them. They become blind spots. So Feldenkrais for me is a way to be able to see our blind spots. The second thing is this, because strange and new sometimes feels wrong for our body. And that's why we don't prefer it. And that's why then we limit our choices. In the summer, we had these lessons about eyes. And it occurred to me that because we know anatomically and neurophysiologically that our eyes, the way where we are looking towards, involves all of our spine. So if you're on a bicycle and you're scared of the cliff, if you're looking at where you're scared, you orient your body that way and you're gonna fall off that cliff. So you have to look towards where you wanna go instead of the cliff. So this philosophical component I was talking about before, for me, is exactly that if you learn to orient your body in space, you learn to orient yourself in life. So it becomes a bit more theoretical, but it's there. It's like, if you're afraid of where it is that you're going, if you're looking at what you're afraid of doing, at some point, what will happen is you're orienting yourself towards what you fear instead of what you want, what you covet, what you love. And I seem to have lost Cynthia. Am I on my own? Well, it seems I'm on my own. So, yes, I think, to come back to Cynthia's question, I think that it's very important that we kind of be able to open our minds into what Feldenkrais can do for us, not only for our bodies, but also, for the way we orient ourselves in life and how it can help us in a deeper level. So I will be talking a bit about what this 5-day challenge is until Cynthia comes back. So we have 5 days, and each day will have a different theme. We've chosen the themes around what could be considered pillar lessons of the Feldenkrais method. And they're very different. And one of the reasons I love that they're very different is that sometimes when you get into a lesson, it might be you might feel a very important difference. There's so many lessons where you get a wow factor, and that's very nice. But then there's some other lessons that maybe they're hinting at something that's a bit deeper and that you don't want to work yet, or maybe it's something that's irrelevant to your body. And then you do the lesson and yeah, it's okay. You kind of feel better. It was interesting, but there's not this wow sensation. So through these 5 days, because we've chosen the lessons so carefully, I think that you're at least bound to find your 2 or 3 wows. And I think that's very important, because the moment you get this lesson that is for you the wow lesson, it's so much easier to work and to come to this idea of, yes, okay, I will try to slow down, although it's not in my character. And I will find a moment in my busy day to just go into this quiet space and explore myself. What else? Well, the the lessons that are for everyone will be curated so that they are as accessible as possible. We'll try to find different positions and different movements that people can do in case they are not able to lie on the floor, which is many lessons in Feldenkrais, we lie on the floor. So you will have options to lie on a bed or on a sofa or to do the lesson sitting, which I think is really important. And for, oh,